Ow! Greetings, YouTube. It's DecKrash, better known as Brandon, bringing you another review of Terra Nova. A little overdue again. I'm sorry. I just tend to drag my feet when it comes to watching these. So, today was another really good episode. I guess, with the amount of sneaking around that was done in this episode, you ought to just have called the episode Sneaking Around. So, again, it takes place on multiple fronts. And that's one of the things I like about Terra Nova, is that it focuses in on multiple scenarios. Some of my favorite stories, books and such, focus on multiple situations. Some I like more than others, but with Terra Nova, I've always found something really interesting with, like, they'll portray one part of the plot here involving these set of characters, another part of the plot involving this set of characters, another part of the plot involving these sets of characters. So, today, the episode revolved, of course, around Josh and his quest to get his girlfriend out of the 22nd century and into Terra Nova. And the other scenario involved Maddie and her fixation with a famous biologist who has come back from a long journey around this prehistoric world, bringing in all kinds of really cool stuff. And then the other situation involves the dad and his investigation of a particular crime that was committed in Terra Nova again. And finally, another scenario that involved Commander Taylor and another particular character that I will go into just a little bit. So, let's start off with Maddie, seeing how that was one of the pretty interesting and very character building episodes. I like how this series is taking each episode to build a little more and a little more and a little more on each character. You're discovering more facets of them and making them richer in that way. So, this famous scientist who Maddie had who had a collection of books in his works, and even had a small correspondence with, has returned from some sort of voyage outside of the walls of Terra Nova into the land beyond with a whole bunch of different plant specimens and mineral specimens, animal specimens, and so she's kind of like a big idol to her, since she's, of course, the nerdy scientist girl. And so she tries to take a shine to him, and he acts like a total jerk in some respects. He appreciates the attention that he's getting from her, but when she starts rattling on and on about the correspondence between herself and him that she remembers, he doesn't seem to know anything about it. And so that starts her suspicion off, and though she hangs around him a lot, helping him out with the various things he's doing once he's gotten back to Terra Nova, certain little things like her comparing the letter that she had from him to the signature he had in her book, it shows that that there's something not quite right. Now, the doctor had a kind of an excuse, because he just admitted that he had sort of a really bad memory because he had a stroke. But as the story progresses, you realize there's a lot more to this guy than meets the eye, and it's not very good. But it's really fun watching watching Maddie investigate more and more, because she has no real evidence to prove that this guy isn't really who he seems to be. But the head scientist at Terra Nova, the one who had, of course, had the fling with her mom years ago, he also doesn't like him. So she finds sort of an ally in him at one point. And all the while, as she's doing her little investigation, you have nice little chats with her sister Zoe, the youngest daughter. And it's pretty cute how Zoe thinks that he's a vampire because one of her classmates has been talking about vampires, this vampire that's like, oh, he might be a vampire, which I thought was just totally adorable. He didn't have a whole lot of building of Zoe's character in this one, but that's understandable because they're already got several scenarios going on, so they did what they could with her, and I thought that was really great. But it seemed a bit too much. They were trying to stretch to give her a bit too much of a part. But I think that the writers were realizing that they need to do a bit more with her, and so I think that they're trying. So I can give them points for that. The next scenario is the most serious one, and that was involving Josh. Now, as I had explained before, Josh has a girlfriend back in the 22nd century that he was trying to get into Terra Nova. And since he was working with this bartender who happens to be in cahoots with the Sixers, he learns that the Sixers have ways of communicating with the 22nd century. Big plot point here. And so he wants like some sort of guarantee that they can do it. And so when he goes back to the Sixers camp, and they have to blindfold him because the Sixers are in hiding from the rest of the people of Terra Nova. So they bring him to the Sixers camp, and he talks to Mira, and Mira has this weird little device, and then he sees his girlfriend, some sort of hologram of his girlfriend. He's actually interacting with her. Now, at first I was thinking, well, maybe it's just a trick, but no, we find out that she's really interacting with her in a pretty human way. So he realizes, okay, they're legit. And this is when Mira is calling in her favor. You see, in the previous episode, she told Josh, yeah, I can get your girlfriend to Terra Nova, but you're going to have to do something for me. Well, she calls in the favor. The favor, of course, to have Josh steal some very special medicine out of the medical lab where his mother works. As a matter of fact, he has to actually steal her ID. And he manages to do it with some difficulties, which lead to certain types of evidence for his dad, who is, of course, a cop, to run an investigation. So it eats him. You can see as the episode's going on, after doing this, it's just eating him alive inside. And as the story about him progresses, that it's running alongside of the story involving Maddie. Now, moving on from that is what's going on, like I said, concerning Jim, who is investigating this particular crime, and all his little dead ends. But I'll get back to that in a moment because that's fairly minor. Another plot continuity here was when Jim and Commander Taylor were just taking sort of a personal time off when they went fishing, which shows a fairly funny part in the series, which I kind of enjoyed. But then Taylor learns that the person who he had expelled from the colony because of murder, it has been hanging around that area. So he goes to find him, and that's a pretty interesting thing because when he shows up with the guy, he has his leg was bitten into, and you find out it's from a creature called an ancestral Komodo dragon. Now, I don't know if this particular creature is just one of the made-up creatures that the studio did with the aid of various paleontologists, or an actual dinosaur that we know about. But this thing is huge. And it goes into some really interesting things about a Komodo dragon. Stuff I already knew is that Komodo dragons have a whole bunch of bacteria in their mouths. Their mouths are like one of the most septic, nasty mouths you could ever get bitten by, and that's actually how they hunt their prey. They bite their prey and they just let it wander off and just wait, and they let the bacteria do its work. A couple of days later, the animal's so sick it can barely move, and so the Komodo just comes in and finishes the job, and that's what it was doing to the soldier. And this shows an interesting part of Commander Taylor's character, because despite the fact that he kicked this guy out, he has enough of a sense of honor and justice to actually protect this soldier. Now, he did it also for an interesting reason. So he fights off the Komodo dragon, which is twice his size, which is actually a pretty cool looking creature. It looked like a elongated version of a Dimetrodon. If you haven't seen one of those, look them up. With a giant frill on its neck, and it was just enormous. I love the way they designed these dinosaurs. The CG is kind of meh, but it works for the story, and that was a really cool scene with him fighting off the ancestral Komodo dragon. A little bit anticlimactic. That's the only problem I had with it. But that wasn't the central focus. After he scared off the Komodo dragon, he talked to the soldier who had been kicked out, and basically told him where he could get back into Terra Nova, and that was to go and get in good with the Sixers, so he could know who this little mole is. Because as every episode's been going by, Taylor's been realizing that that more and more that there's a mole inside of Terra Nova, and he's trying to figure out who it is. Now, bringing back to Josh, who has, like I said, stolen from the lab, the guilt eats him alive until he has to basically make choices to whether or not to keep, to spill his guts about the whole issue or to keep quiet. Now, the choice that he makes at the end of the story is going to lead to a lot of really interesting questions. And once again, I like this series because with every answer, with every plot resolution, it opens the door for more questions. One in particular being the fact that they learn that the Sixers can communicate with the future, and that leads Commander Taylor to finally talk to Jim, who he's gotten into fairly good friendship with, to tell him about his son. And they mentioned his son in some of these episodes. And if you have been watching it, his son supposedly has run away from the colony, and most people thought he was dead. But if you've been watching the episodes, you know what the whole deal is with that. So Commander Taylor ends up revealing some very interesting information about his son at the end. But that I will leave for those of you who are interested by my description of the plot. I would like for all y'all to watch this series. It's really, really good, and I think that it's just it's picking up its paces. I've read some reviews in other places that sit there and go blah to it. And personally, I think that a lot of people are just really too hard to please. Me, I'm easy to please. But I do like good science fiction, and I really have been liking what they've been doing with Terra Nova. It hasn't been doing anything really, really, really huge yet, but the last few episodes have been some pretty good ones, and have been really letting more and more things unravel with the plot. So I'm just waiting to see where that's going to lead us. So once again, I highly recommend this series. And as for this episode, I give this one most like about an 8 to an 8.5. It wasn't quite as just revealing and just so gripping as a previous episode was, but it did a great job with the storytelling, great job with revealing characters. Some they kind of skimped on, and there were a few little bits that they seemed to be a little bit contrived and tacked on. But they did well with what they were given. So I really liked this episode personally. And so once again, that concludes my review of Terra Nova. And so I will see you again next week when I review the next episode when it comes out. So until then, everyone, as always, DecKrash, better known as Brandon. By the way, something you're really gonna like is gonna come up next. I'm not talking about Terra Nova. I'm talking about videos. So comments, questions, leave them down in the comment section below. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And so I hope to see you again. And as always, guys, stay lucky and stay blessed.